Ross Tucker, a good buddy, Westwood One, CBS Sports, college football analyst, and hosts the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You can find him on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. All right. The running back position. How do we solve it? Or do we need to solve it? Why are we upset?
Well, I can tell you why we're upset. We are upset because star players who everybody drafts in the first round on their fantasy team, who everybody's kids have their jerseys, their money's going the wrong way. I mean, Dan, the salary cap's going up every year by a pretty significant amount, and running back contracts are going in the opposite direction. And that's tough for guys to stomach, and I don't blame them. And by the way, I don't blame the teams either, right? Like if you're the New York Giants, Dan, and you can get Saquon this year for 10.1 and next year for whatever that is, 12.2.
Yeah.
Why would you give him $16 million a year in a long-term contract? You wouldn't, right? So the franchise tag is a major, major issue here. Although, you know what, Dan? You know what might even be worse for Saquon and Jacobs and these guys? I'm not sure they'd get more money even if they were on the open market. That's the scary thing. I mean, the teams utilizing the franchise tag is a whole other NFLPA topic to get rid of the franchise tag, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that even if Saquon and Jacobs were free agents, that I don't think they would get a lot more than this, that's got to be the part that's really concerning for running backs and their agents.
Yeah, I don't know. The owners aren't going to try to help the running back. The league is predicated on passing. Now you have running quarterbacks here. So your running back is not he's going to carry the ball 25 to 30 times. He might get that many touches, but the position has changed, just like the middle linebacker position has changed. If you don't have to have that running back, you don't have to have that middle linebacker there. Nobody's talking about the plight of middle linebackers, are they?
No, not really. And I'll tell you this much. By the way, that's primarily because they don't draft them in fantasy football, I think. But I'll say a couple of things, Dan. Number one, if you really think about it, right, it starts when they're way younger. Like, good running backs should be able to come out after their freshman year, definitely sophomore year of college, right? Like some of these guys, Saquon Barkley and some of these guys we've seen recently having to play that third year of college football, Leonard Fournette, it's ridiculous. I mean, and then what really I think bothers me personally is the 5-year contract for first-round picks and then the franchise tag. I mean, Dan, do you realize that if the Giants tag Saquon this year, which they did, if they tag him again next year, that's 7 years, okay, that Saquon Barkley doesn't have the ability to hit a market and decide where he wants to live, see how much money he can make. Something's not right there. I mean, this isn't baseball. These are running back. 7 years is an entire running back career, right? And this guy can't one time, not once, be able to, like everybody else in life, go out and see what they're worth and see what employers might be interested in, what they might offer him.
Well, I know it sounds like an injustice, but the owners aren't going to be benevolent souls and philanthropic and go, you know what? Our suggestion is if you have a separate salary cap for quarterbacks, then maybe you could spread the wealth elsewhere on a team. And maybe the running backs could be compensated. But I do like the idea if they could come out after their freshman year in college. I like the idea, but what's the possibility that college football and the NFL are going to be together on that?
Oh, not real good. It would have to be a lawsuit like Maurice Claret tried. It would have to be something of that ilk. I will say this, though. It's interesting because you hear some people say running backs don't matter. I struggle with that, Dan. I mean, if you watch a Browns game, you can't tell me that Nick Chubb doesn't make a difference in the outcome of those games. Or Titans with Derrick Henry. Or ask the Niners. I mean, the Niners gave up draft picks, Dan, as you know, for the right to pay McCaffrey $16 million a year. And you can't tell Niners fans after they got McCaffrey last year that he didn't make a difference. in the outcome of some of those games. And what's really strange, Dan, I played mainly center and guard, right? And I wasn't great, but there's guards now that are making $20 million a year or more. I mean, if you would have told me when I was playing, Dan, from 01 to 2008, with our running backs, we had like Travis Henry, Willis McGahee, Stephen Davis when I was in Washington, Emmitt Smith when I was with the Cowboys. If you would have told me, hey, Ross, like 20 years from now, guards are going to be getting paid double what running backs get paid, I'm not sure. I think maybe the pendulum has swung too far. I love Chris Lindstrom, the right guard for the Falcons. Quentin Nelson, the left guard for the Colts, is a good player. I'm not sure I think that they're twice as valuable or have twice as much of an impact on the outcome of NFL football games.
If I said you could have Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley and tie him up with a long-term deal,
I would probably say Saquon because I think he's a little bit more explosive and more productive in the passing game. But Jacobs had a heck of a year. It feels like Saquon's kind of been up and down, and that Jacobs had a couple bad years, but then last year Jacobs was awesome. But
you do have two quarterbacks here, Ross, who their success is predicated on how good their running backs have been. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the quarterback in Vegas. He needs Josh Jacobs. Danny Dimes, he does not get that contract extension without Saquon Barkley.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dan. So, by the way, imagine that, right? Imagine you're Saquon and the whole offense runs through you, and you can't get a $12 million a year offer, but the other guy who was calling the plays in the huddle to run the offense through you, either a run or a pass to you, gets $40 million a year. I mean, that's tough. The question now, Dan, is what do these guys do? And to your point, okay, because I think you made a good one, they have to get something more than just playing 1 year for 10.1, right? So they can't get a long-term deal anymore, but they can get more money on a 1-year deal, or they can get a 1-year deal that inserts in there a clause that they can't be tagged again. I think these guys need to be willing to skip maybe even games to get those clauses. And then there's a whole other thing we could talk about. I don't think these teams want to play games without these guys. They're not going to win very many games without these guys. So they could report and sign the tender, get their money. But, oh, man, because they weren't at training camp, my hamstring's real sore and tight. I don't know if I can play this first game or the second game. Sore hammy, man.
Before I let you go, we're talking to Ross Tucker, Westwood One, CBS Sports. The teams don't report the same day for training camp. Why isn't there a unilateral, this is when training camp starts, and everybody shows up at the same time?
Good question. The answer is there are rules negotiating the CBA between the NFL and the NFLPA. How many days before the first game your rookies can report, and how many days before the first game your veterans can report. Different teams handle it differently. The 7 that are reporting today, the rookies, they're using every day they got, Dan. Okay. They're taking every day. As soon as we can get those guys back and start working with them and grinding them, bring them back. There's other teams that think, I don't know if that's really what's best for them or our coaches. I don't know if we really want them back that early. Let's wait another week. So the teams that are doing it today with their rookies, they are within the rules. The other teams have just decided that that's not really in the best interest of the organization to have the rookies report this early.
Great to talk to you as always, buddy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan.
That's Ross Tucker, Westwood One, CBS Sports NFL college football analyst and former NFL offensive lineman. Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You can find him on social media at Ross Tucker NFL.